everybody, welcome back to my workshop and welcome back to my garage. What we're doing now is we're on to the neck phase of the build. I've got the necks cut out and rough shaped. They haven't been finished shaped yet, but they are rough shaped. I've got two necks I went ahead and did because I was able to get two necks out of that neck blank, so that's good. So I wanted to go ahead and do both necks at the same time and get those in work. So as you can see, and they're both identical, what I've done is I've got carbon fiber stiffening rods on each side, and then I've got the truss rod going down the middle. I am going to use a heel mounted truss with the wheel at the heel of the neck for the truss rods, so I do have to still get that cut in. But what this video is going to be going over is basically just getting the necks to this point right here. So let's go ahead and make some sawdust. All right, here's my neck billet. As you can see, I've got the neck outline traced on this side and on this side because I'm going to be able to get two necks out of this. I've also got the outlines traced out on the side. What I did is I used a combination of two different template sets on this. First off, I've got the Les Paul templates from Crimson Guitar. Really nice template set. I established that, but you'll notice this has the tenon joint on this to where I'd have to cut down. I really don't want to do a tenon joint on this. So what I've done is I've used this to outline my initial shape. I've used this template here to go ahead and trace the outline on the side for the break angle of the headstock and the thickness of the neck. But what I've done is I also have this set of templates for an Explorer style guitar from Maximum Guitar Works. And this one I opted to use the full neck heel for the joint. And that's what I'm going to be doing with this one. So what I've done is I went ahead and laid this template over top and traced out the last bit of the neck. That way I won't have a tenon on this anymore. I am going to use a spoked wheel adjusted truss rod, so it'll adjust at the heel of the neck. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and route my channel for my truss rod. When I do the truss rod, I'll be able to go all the way through the billet here and all the way out the end because I am using the spoke wheel adjust rod, and this last little bit here is going to be cut off because that's going to be actually in the pickup cavity of the guitar. So I'll be able to route all the way through that to go ahead and set up for my truss rod. And then after I get the truss rod channel done, I'm going to go ahead and cut my channels for my carbon fiber rods to reinforce the neck with, because as I'm using mahogany, I just decided I wanted to use the carbon fiber rods, see how they go. It'll be my first time using those. So I'll go ahead and get those installed on both sides of the neck. Then after the epoxy cures that I'm gluing in the carbon fiber rods with, then I can go ahead and cut out the side profiles or the profiles of the neck. The one thing I did is I did use an additional template from Maximum Guitar Works, and I'm going to lay the other template over top just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm doing with this. So here's my Crimson Guitar template laid over the top, and what you can see is my Crimson Guitar, this one's a flat. On the Maximum Guitar Works template, you can see that there's a little bit of an angle there because I am going to have a break angle of about 3 degrees on the neck to allow for the bridge. So what I did is I used the Maximum Guitar Works template to go ahead and trace that 3 degrees. So when I cut the neck blank out, I'm going to stick with this. That way I'll have that drop off, and then I'll just clean it up with some files and chisels to make sure it's nice and square to where it goes into the neck pocket of the guitar and lines up straight. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and get set up with the router. Make sure that I've got it centered. We're going to get our router channel, our truss rod channels cut. Then after we get the truss rod channels cut on each side and get the truss rods roughly fitted in, then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and cut the channels for the carbon fiber rods, and we'll get those glued in. Alright, so what I've done is I went ahead and got the router bit centered up in my router. I made a couple test passes down here in the cutoff area. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and route my channel for the truss rod. I'll be making several passes, cutting a little bit each time, and we'll just go from there. right, that's just below the top of the neck, so that's perfect where that's going to go. I will have to route out a little bit here for the turn wheel, but that's going to be okay. So we got the one truss rod cut. Let's go ahead and turn it over and start on the other side. All right, so you can see this truss rod channel now is complete as well. Truss rod drops in quite nicely. It's below the surface, just a touch below the surface, which is perfect, with plenty of room at the end to make the adjustments. So now what I need to do is just decide where I'm going to put my stringers. What I'm planning to do with these is I want to go from approximately the middle of the first fret, between the first fret and the nut, and I'm going to route a channel down each side to drop these in, and that's going to take it to about, if I do it right there, that's going to bring it down past the heel where the heel is going to be glued into the body, and that'll be just about perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my router set up, get the proper bit on it, figure out exactly where I'm going to lay these lines, make sure that I've got them centered on the neck and exactly where I want to put them. I've got my rods and I've laid them out, and what I've done is I've come 1/4 inch, or excuse me, 7 millimeters off the edge of the truss rod. I'm getting closer now, so that's why I want to just keep checking these a little bit more. Carbon rods really won't be necessary for this. I mean, there's tons of mahogany necks out there with no carbon fiber stiffening rods in it. I just wanted to try something different. I wanted to see how it goes because a lot of guitar builders now are using stiffening rods, especially in some of the softer woods. With maple, probably not so much. Canary, probably not so much. But with mahogany, I've seen a few people doing it, so I thought I'd give it a try with this, kind of learn a new skill and learn what I want to do and how I want to do it. But we're pretty close to where we need to be now. And as always, when you're doing woodworking, it's always best to take small passes. That way you don't take too much, because it's easy to take away, but it's very hard to put back. Truss rod fits in nice right below the surface. I'll glue in my carbon fiber rods right like that, and that's how it's going to go in the neck. So what I'm doing, don't know if you can see it or not, but I went ahead and laid a piece of tape down over top, and then I'm just taking a scalpel and cutting the outline of my channel. And the reason why I'm doing this is because these are going to get epoxied in, and this tape is going to keep the epoxy from saturating the wood on the outside of it, because any epoxy that gets on the outside wood is going to interfere with bonding of the fretboard. So by doing this, I'm going to make sure that the epoxy stays inside the channel and make it easier to clean up. That way when it's done, I can just peel the tape off and it'll be good. I'm using 30-minute epoxy on this. That way I got plenty of working time. And that way it really has a good cure time. I want to make sure I've got this good and mixed, because if you don't have it good and mixed when you go to put it in and it doesn't cure properly, then it's a mess to get out. You can kind of see now why I put this tape down, because getting the epoxy down in the hole, down in that tiny groove, can be a pain. This way, I know my wood's going to be protected. Now what I'm going to do is we're just going to take this rod and I'm going to kind of scrape it. There we go. There's one in. And that's the advantage of using the 30-minute epoxy here. You have more work time with it, because if I was trying to do this with 5-minute epoxy, it would not be going well. Okay, And again, the same thing, we're going to take the rod and squeegee it in. And now I've just got some lacquer thinner to clean up everything. There we go. All glued in and cleaned up. I'm going to let that cure. I'm going to put a couple clamps on it to make sure everything stays in place. And that's going to be good. So as you can see, this neck blank is now in pretty good shape. I've checked it for squareness. It's square across the top on both sides, so I can get both necks cut out of this. It's really good that I was able to get two necks out of this. Just having it about that extra 8 inches longer than what I would normally do a neck billet allowed me to get the overlap that I needed for my headstock and my heel to offset each other and give me enough material to cut it out. So like I said, the next step is going to be to go ahead and cut this initial angle for the top of the headstocks, and then that way I can go ahead, clamp it down to my table, get a plane to it, get the top of it leveled off that way, because I'm going to have to glue ears on no matter what headstock I choose to use on this, and I haven't decided on the headstock shape, but that gets me one step closer to getting this neck done. All right, so as you can see, I've got my initial angle, headstock angle cut in. I've got plenty of room. I've got plenty of room right here to where I can have room to plane it down to come to that nut line. That way I'm going to get this as a nice smooth surface on top. And I got it on both sides. So that way when I plane this, it's going to be nice and sturdy. All right, all I'm going to do now is just plane this surface down flat and smooth and kind of get it to the you can see and you can feel where as it starts to smooth this out, you can see where the plane's grabbing and where it's not. There we go, it's getting better. And then once I get it close to the nut line, I'll hit it with the sander just to smooth that last little bit out. And as you can see, now I'm taking off nice big ribbons and it's starting to smooth out and flatten out quite nicely. All right, well, welcome back. Yesterday we got quite a bit done on the billet. As you can see, we've got truss rod channels done. We've got our carbon fiber rods in. What I've done here is you'll see I put a little filler piece in there where I ran the router down through when I was doing the truss rod channel. And that's gonna all get milled out when I do the pickup cavity. But what I put it in there for right now is to just have a nice establishment for my center line to where I don't have to guess. So that way I know exactly where my center line is when I go to line up my fretboard, because the fretboard's gonna line up around at that same spot of where the end of the fretboard's gonna be, close to that. That way, once this neck goes into the body and I route for the pickup, it's gonna take care of that filler piece. And I did it on both sides. You'll also notice that for the front of the peg head, I've got the initial angle cut in, and I went ahead and planed that nice, smooth and level, getting ready to glue the ears on that I'm gonna need for my headstock shape. So that's what we're gonna be going over next, is just getting the neck cut out to the proper dimensions. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the neck profiles out. That way I'll have the two separate necks, and then we can start looking at peg head veneer and such. Oh, one other thing that I did on this side, you'll notice I put a little filler block right there at the top for the truss rod access, because what I ended up doing is when I was smoothing this down, I actually went a little bit too far into the nut area. So what I did is I just reestablished the nut line a little bit further back and moved everything back just a little bit. And luckily with the length of the blank, I had plenty of room to do that. So I was still able to salvage both necks. And now I have a nice true surface where the nut's gonna sit flat before it breaks into the headstock angle. All right, there we have it. Our necks are pretty much cut to shape. Got a little trimming here I'm going to do with the handsaw, but we'll take care of that to get that cleaned up inside there. But yeah, 2 good looking neck blanks. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to rough cut the neck profile out. I've got the headstock temporarily traced in. I'm going to glue the wings on to here. But right now what I want to do is go ahead and get the neck kind of cut out. That way the wings are on it. And then all I have to do is trim those off once the glue dries. So I'm going to go ahead and do this initial cut now on both necks. All right, here's a little bit more to shape. This is a little bit closer to what we're after. So as you can see, I've got the headstock shape traced out. I've got the ears glued on in the areas that I need to get that done. The neck's still in pretty rough shape at the moment, just initial cut out on the bandsaw. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and get the headstock shape cut out on the bandsaw, and that way I can have this cleaned up a little bit, and then I can move on to going ahead and doing final routes and shaping the neck to the right size. All right, so the initial shape on the headstock is all cut in now on both necks. So the next thing that we have on these necks is to start working them into final shape, getting the templates put back on them, getting on the router table and get them routed to the correct sizes so we can start doing the back profiles on the neck. All right, so what I'm getting ready to do now is we're getting ready to run the necks through the router to get everything cleaned up and get them to the right size. Basically what I'm going to do is strip of masking tape down the neck. And what I've got is I've got my center lines established here at the nut line and again here at the heel. So that's going to allow me to get the template on. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to install the templates with the scribe line down. That way I don't have any deflection through the template. So with this running down the center of the neck, and I don't use activator on this because I want to have a little bit of adjustment time. So just a couple beads of super glue down on the tape. And then I'm going to line the template up At the top with the nut line, make sure I'm on the center line there with the nut. And then on the bottom, make sure I'm aligned with the center there. All right, and as you can see, see if you can get in there and see this. What I've got is I've got it lined up on my nut, on the center line and on the nut lines that I've drawn on the neck. And then here at the bottom of the heel, I've got it aligned on that center line there. What this is going to do now is allow me to run this across my router table and get the sides of this neck down to what they're supposed to be. That way I can go ahead and again trace the limits on here and start doing the carve on the neck. But this is ready to run across the router. All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this video here. Basically, I've got the body blank cut out to the right size. Still got to do final routing on that. And I have 2 neck blanks roughed out and ready to go. So please, if you like what I'm doing, if you've liked the video, click like, click subscribe. Everything's moving forward with these builds. It's going to come along really well. I am going to do a second body with these, another mahogany body, but I think that one's going to have a top on it. We'll go from there, but both these are going to be LP Junior style guitars, probably one with P90s and probably the other one with humbuckers. So until next time, thanks for tuning in and take care.